Alright, so welcome to another Adobe Illustrator demonstration. Today we're going to focus on making patterns and basic brushes, and the end result will be creating a cool background like this. So what is a brush exactly? We went over this briefly when we looked at kind of the basic interface of Illustrator, but we do have a brush tool, and when we paint with it we can actually choose what kind of brush we want. So I can select the charcoal brush, and it looks like I'm kind of painting with a charcoal textured stroke. We can choose any number of these what are called nibs, and depending on their shape will change the thickness as far as, like what direction your stroke is going in. I think this is a good example. So if I go straight across, it's thick, but when I go up and down, it's thin. Kind of mimics that calligraphy nib. And then we have some really interesting ones. This looks like the seam of your jeans. Okay, so these are all preset brushes that you can choose. There's actually a whole brush libraries down here to where you can choose all kinds of preset brushes, and I would encourage you to explore those if you want. But what we're going to do is we're going to make our own. So how do we do that? First, we're going to focus on creating these striped paths here. So what we need to do, we can just close some of these windows here to give us a little more room, is first create a color scheme. So right over here I have kind of this green to yellow color scheme. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool and create a series of circles. So I created one circle, and now I'm just holding Shift and Option as I click and drag to duplicate them, and I'm going to create 5 circles total. Now the first circle, I'm going to come over to my swatches palette. If you can't find your swatches palette, you can always find it under the window menu, and it will be under the S's. So I'm going to start by applying. I'm going to take away the stroke. For the fill, I'm going to apply that dark kind of purpley blue there. Then I'm going to move down the spectrum here. So my next circle will be this lighter blue, and again I'm going to take the stroke away. That's important. And then I'm going to move on to the next blue, take my stroke away, and the next blue. Oh, I applied that light blue to the stroke, so in this case I can just swap the colors. And finally the last blue, and again taking my stroke away. Alright, so I have a series of 5 blues, almost greens, or moving into the green spectrum here. So the first thing I want to do is grab a rectangle tool and just fill the whole page with a color, specifically the darkest color. So I can grab my eyedropper tool, and making sure that the background rectangle I just drew is selected, I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool and click the darkest blue so it applies it to that. Okay. Then I can select that rectangle, and I'm going to go to Object Lock Selection. What that's going to do is it's going to lock down that selection so we can't select it anymore, and this is going to make it easier so we're not accidentally clicking the background while working on top of it. It's going to make our workflow a lot easier and less of a pain to select things once we get some graphics on top of it. Okay, so moving on to creating this striped brush, as I said toward the beginning here. The first thing we want to do is grab our pen tool. I'm going to create a straight horizontal line. So I'm going to click once, holding down Shift to keep the line perfectly straight. And then I'm going to click again, and I have this super straight line. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to click on the next blue down. And what that does is it applies this blue to this line. But as you know, it's a fill, so we have to actually make it a stroke. So I'm going to then swap the fill so that it moves the fill color into the stroke color. And I can do that by hitting the swap fill and stroke arrow. Booyah. There we have it. So now that it's applied to my stroke, I can come into the stroke settings that are found here. If you can't find this, you can just go to Window Stroke and we'll pull it up for you. If you don't see all of these options, you'll have to click on this little list icon. It'll say Show Options, and it'll give you all of these. I'm going to make this 10 points thick. I'm going to hit Enter. Now what that will do is it'll make your line 10 points thick. So what I want to do now is, with my selection tool, I'm going to select this line. Then I'm going to hit Return on the keyboard. And what that does is it brings up the move parameters. So I'm going to start by saying, okay, 0 inches horizontally. But then I'm going to change my vertical dimensions to 10 pt, which is points. And once you click out of that, it's going to convert it to inches, and that's just because our increments are inches in this particular document. But I'm choosing 10 points, 10 pt, because the line is 10 points thick. And what I want to do is create a copy of this line, and it's going to move the copy 10 points down. So what that means, it's going to be precisely butt up against the one above it. So here's what it looks like. I'm going to hit copy, and there we go. We have another one showing up just underneath it. I can then grab my eyedropper tool. I'm going to apply the next blue to it. But you see that it applies it to the fill. So what I want to do is I'm going to swap that back into the stroke and bump that stroke back up to 10. And you can see what's happening here. I'll zoom in. Okay. So now I'm going to click this again. So what this does is it's basically the same thing as clicking on it, holding down Option, and we can create a duplicate. But by using the move parameters, we don't have to guess as to where it falls, and then play around with this, fuss around with this gap in between. It just makes it more precise and getting all these stripes to kind of line up. So I'm going to do that 2 more times. So I'm selecting this stripe, and I'll back up here. Selecting the stripe, hitting Enter on the keyboard, changing the vertical dimensions to 10 points, and then hitting Copy, and it creates a new one. Choose the eyedropper tool. I'm going to grab the lighter blue there, make it this stroke, and then jump back to 10 point thickness. Okay, and then one more time, selecting the stripe, hitting Enter to grab our move parameters, change our vertical dimensions to 10 points, choose Copy, then grab my eyedropper, apply the next color, move that color to the stroke by swapping the colors from fill to stroke, and then moving my stroke weight back to 10 points. And I'm left with 4 stripes that are directly on top of each other. There's no space in between. This is the foundation of our custom brush that we will make to begin creating our background. Now, how do we do that? Well, we need to open up our brush palette. I can close out some of these. Our brush palette, for me, is found right here. just click and drag the tab, pull it right out, close the rest. And you can see I've already got one created in here from the previous example. But what I want to do is I want to create one of these. So I'm going to select all my stripes so that they're all selected. And then down here we have this new brush button. Go and click that. And then it says, okay, what kind of brush do you want to create? We are creating what's called an art brush. So go ahead and check art brush, hit OK. And you can title it. You can call this like blue rainbow, or call it whatever you like. We want to make sure the direction of the brush is going either right to left or left to right. In this case, it's left to right. And that's all we need to know at the moment. So I'm going to hit OK. And you see it applies it to the brush's palette. So now I can come over here, grab my brush stroke, my brush tool, select that brush stroke. I can begin painting with a custom brush I just created. You'll notice when you take certain turns that when we zoom in here, the stripes kind of separate. So we're going to have to avoid that. So the way to avoid that in this particular example is to keep our brush strokes moving at 45-degree angles, 45 or 90-degree angles. And let's do just that. So you can apply this brush to any tool that you use. So whether you're creating a circle or drawing with the pen tool or whatever, this brush can be applied to that path. So we're going to mimic this pattern. Let's grab our pen tool, and we're going to draw this line first. I'm going to start off the page, clicking once, not dragging, but I'm holding down Shift so that it constrains my line into 45-degree increments. So clicking off the page once and then off the page again to kind of cut across this corner here. I'm going to select my line and apply that brush to it. Grab my pen tool again. I'm going to start up here, and again holding down Shift, I'm going to come down around here, and I'm just doing single clicks and moving off the page and applying that brush. So I'm just mimicked this brush here. Okay, now I'm going to do this one. So we'll start here, holding down Shift and cutting across, and then applying the brush. Now you'll see that it kind of hangs on to the end here. If you need to release it, all you have to do is hold down Command on the keyboard and then just click anywhere and it will let go so that you can start a new line. I'm going to start a new line up here, holding down Shift. Going to kind of zigzag through the center here. And I can move over here, hold down Command to release it. Then I can select that line again and apply that brush. So we have this one, we have this one, we have this one. So yeah, it looks like we got them all. All right. So as you can see, some of them are a little thicker. So I can select the ones that I want to be thicker and then just bump up the stroke weight. So in this case, I think I just need to go to 2 points. All right, now we want to round the corners. So I'm going to select all of my stripes and I'm going to go to Effect, Stylize, Round Corners. And we can check the preview button here to see what happens when we round the corners. I think 1.25 is pretty good. If you go too far, you'll begin to notice some separation, like you were seeing when I first gave that example using the brush. The stripes were separating. So I think 1.25 inch rounded corner or radius will be just fine and will help us avoid that separation issue. So I'm going to hit OK. So you can see how we're getting closer. Now what I want to do is I want to start to give the illusion that they're interweaving. As you can see, this line here goes under this stripe and then over the next stripe. And right now, all it's doing is going under. So this is where we can use the scissors tool. And I'm going to kind of zoom in here. And with my scissors tool right here, if you don't see it, it's probably under the eraser tool. It's in that same drawer. And what we want to do is we're going to make a single click on the vector line of this stroke. I'm just going to click once with the scissors tool. What that does is it chops it into two pieces. Okay. And with that second piece, I'm just going to select it, and I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. So now it looks like it goes under and then over. And because those seams still line up, it looks like it's still one piece. So we're going to do the same thing right here. That intersection we're going to select and then come here and click on that piece and choose Bring to Front. Alright, so we're going under here and then over there. But then we want to go under here again. So I'm going to select this, grab my scissors, cut it again, and with this one, we're going to send to back. Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Now what's going to happen is it's going to send it all the way back behind my background. So I can't even see it anymore. So what I need to do is I need to go into the Layers palette. And if I click that stripe, it'll highlight it over here so I know this is my stripe. And then we see here that this is my blue background. So I need to click this stripe and put it just above the background so that it will reappear. The other easy way of doing that is not making the cut and just clicking this object and bringing it forward, but that's too easy. Okay, so now let's start kind of decorating it. So you see we have a series of circles in here. We have patterns of polka dots, and then we even kind of fray the one of these brushes by breaking the stripes, breaking them up and causing them to go in different directions. Let's start with just adding some basic circles. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and we can begin just drawing a circle. I want it to be a fill, and it needs to be one of these colors. Preferably not one of the background colors because it's just going to disappear. And again, you can change the color of your circle by using the eyedropper tool and applying that exact color just by clicking on those color circles you made at the very beginning. So I'm using kind of this teal color, and I'm going to drop it right on the kind of the corner here, and I'm just going to create. I'm holding down Shift so they're all perfect circles. Just kind of create these little cloud bubbly shapes right on top of, as you can see, right on top of the existing, the same color stripe. So it kind of looks like it's bubbling out of the same color. So I'm just going to do that just about everywhere. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a big circle, a little circle, and then, or a big circle, a medium circle, and then like a tiny circle that kind of bubbles out the side. Okay, so let's just do this, spend some time on creating that pattern to repeat itself throughout, just to add a little more flair. every now and again, change up the color. Something like that. So, spend some time here. I'm going to fast forward the video so that you can see this come together a lot faster. Here we go. Okay, so that's pretty good for that that side of things. Let's then begin to think about some larger circles. So I'm going to just kind of plop those in each corner, kind of fill out some of those spaces, and I can do those in varying colors. And send them to the back again. Just got to make sure they're above the background layer. Something like that. And you can also click and drag with the Option key down. Yeah, something like that, but we'll change this to this color. All right. So now what we have is a couple of circles with like these stripes in them. So we can do that by using what's called a clipping mask. First, we're going to grab our pen tool. Going to click once, hold down hold down Shift, click again. So I have this super straight vertical line. I'm gonna switch my my fill to my stroke and bump up the stroke to be, let's do 10 points again. Now with the selection tool, I'm going to hold down Shift and Shift and Option. And I'm going to click and drag over. And I want to drag it over so that there's a bit of a gap in between. And without doing anything after that, I'm going to then hit Command D on the keyboard. And what Command D does is it repeats the last action you've just done. So if you remember, with my selection tool, I clicked and duplicated a stripe, okay, by holding down Shift and Option. So now when I hit Command D, it just repeats that action, and the more I hit Command D, the more it repeats it. So I'm just gonna hit Command D on the keyboard over and over and over again. And then I can take a circle and draw it right over top like that. So now I have a circle on top of a bunch of lines. If I select all of these, I can then go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And what that does is it crops everything so that everything inside of the object overlapping it falls inside of that object. I'm going to select that object, holding down Shift, just going to rotate it 45 degrees, and I can drop it right on top. Any which way I want it to go. I think I might put this one over here. Something like that. Then making sure, send it to back. Put on top of the background layer. Something like that. Gonna duplicate it, I can make it smaller. So let's do that again, only with a different color this time. So I'm grabbing my pen tool, creating a vertical line, but let's make this light blue. Again, the weight, oops, light blue, but then we got to swap the color to this, the stroke. We'll make this 5 points this time. We're going to select and copy it, and then hit Command D over and over and over again. Grab our ellipse tool, create a perfect circle over that, and then select it all. Go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Then we have a light blue one that we can put on top of even just our colorful purple ones, dark blue, whatever you want to call it. We can even kind of bring them in here. Send back, but on top of the background layer. So there we go. You can see how the more you add, the more intricate and interesting it becomes. All right, so last step here is to fray this, this particular stroke right here. And the way we do that is we need to expand it so that it's not still on one stroke line, but it's on 4. So all you have to do is select that particular graphic, and then we're going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and you'll notice that it breaks it apart. So now we can select any one of those stripes instead of it functioning as one stripe. We need to also break it apart by going to Object, Ungroup. So if you'll notice now, when I click it, all 4 are selected, no matter which one I click on. But we can change that by choosing the Ungroup option. So now, once I hit Ungroup, I can select them individually. When I select them individually, I can grab my Direct Selection tool, click on the very end stroke, and again, I'm going to keep Shift held down so I keep my 45-degree angle there. I'm just going to move these to varying lengths. Okay. Then I'm going to create another circle. Again, we're working with perfect circles. I'm going to grab my pen tool and I'm going to cut on those existing anchor points. So I'm really just cutting out a quarter of the circle. And I can rotate this to be 45 degrees. I can just line it up with the with those little frayed edges or frayed ends I have there. And if I want to go in a different direction, I can rotate it so it goes in a different direction, like so, and like so. Then I can grab my eyedropper tool and apply those same colors to it there. And then if I want to extend these lines, I'm going to grab my pen tool, I'm going to click on the very end anchor point, and again, Shift is your friend in this particular demonstration. I'm holding down Shift so we can extend those lines out like that. Okay. I'm going to move this over so we can see it better. Something like that. And then all I did here was just created some more circles that reflected the same color of the stripe. So it kind of looks like it bubbled out. We can do that for all of these. Okay. So we have our frayed edge there. The last thing we have is to create this polka dotted pattern. So we could do this. and it would take forever. We create a circle, then we duplicate that circle, and 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 just go on forever, and it would be super annoying. There is a much easier way to do this, to create a polka dot pattern, and that is to simply, you guessed it, create a circle. I'm going to zoom in here. But then I'm also going to create a rectangle, and I'm going to draw it right over it. And I'm going to take away the fill and the stroke, so it's just a transparent rectangle on top of a circle. You want to line them up. So you can line them up perfectly by selecting them both, and then at the top of the screen here we have these alignment tools, and they, the icons kind of reflect what they do, but you can hover over them and you can see that we can horizontally align these center. So if I click on this, watch what happens over here. It aligns them perfectly horizontally on the center point. And then if I come over here, this will align them perfectly vertically on the center. So I click that, and now they're on top of each other, perfectly centered. So we have these two objects, and we can just simply click and drag this now right into the swatches palette, and it adds it here. And what that is doing is it's saying, okay, you can apply this to any object now as a fill. So if I create a rectangle here and then choose this, you see what happens? It's kind of cool, right? So we can then grab chunks of our illustration here and fill in those portions of fill in those spaces. I do want to send this to back, so send to back. Again, I got to make sure it's on top of the background layer, like that. And I can create another one. Those ones seem a little big in comparison to over here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the circle a little smaller, and I got to apply a lighter color. Grab my rectangle, make my rectangle a little bigger so the space around the circle is, there's more space. You're going to align center horizontal, align center vertical, so it's perfectly lined up. Grab the whole thing, drop it in the layers palette. So now I can, with my pen tool, maybe fill in this space. It's getting kind of busy, but it's up to you where you want to put it. So I'm just loosely kind of coloring in this space because I know that edge is going to disappear the second I send it backward. So I'm going to apply that, and then I'm going to go to Object, Send to Back. It's down here at the very bottom, so I'm going to put it on top of the background layer. So now it appears right there. So I'm not really crazy about how this balanced out. I think I could probably do more. Maybe put a polka dot pattern down here instead, but I'm not going to fuss with it too much. You get the idea. Be creative with it. Do what you think looks good, and that really concludes the end of this. Oh no, there's one more step. So you can see how we have this wonderful cropped edge here, and then over here all of our stuff is like spilling out the sides of our artboard. To finish this off, we can create a rectangle that is the same size as our artboard. So I'm going to start here up in the corner, and I'm going to basically fill the whole page. Right now I have my polka dot background on it, so I want to turn that off by choosing a none fill. So now I have this transparent background on top of everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything and then choose clipping mask, just like we did for those striped circles. I'm going to say make. And what it does is it contains everything inside of that rectangle I just made. So now it crops it all off and kind of hides hides the layers, you know, and frames it quite nicely. Everything else you can leave or you can delete if you want to just clean up your artboard. But essentially, that's what we've done. So that is now officially the end of the demo. So be sure to save it. Save it as brushes, and then put your name in it somewhere, and save it into the demos folder. All right, I'll see you in class or in the next video.